Oi oi, it's your boy, searching for content in the jungles of darkest Peru, Jack Slack, and this is the Jack Slack podcast. I was thinking about calling this episode Dispatches from Between Two Skid Marks. Just, what are these events? What's going on with them? We're in an era where they book very lazy cards and then the good fights seem to also end by injury. We've had a really bad run injury-wise lately. But that was the case once again with Arnold Allen versus Calvin Kattar over the weekend. That's why I'm doing this podcast late, because I just could not be motivated to talk about that fight. But now it's the middle of the week, so I will. And we'll talk about the Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos fight coming up next weekend and anything else on that card that's worth touching on. Haven't caught up on Anderson Silva versus Jake. I was about to say Shields. God, that'd be funny. Jake Paul boxing match. But I've seen Twitter freaking out about Anderson Silva getting dropped by a jab and freaking out that the right straight didn't touch him or something like that. You know, well, he was off balance and he got jabbed. that's what happened there. It just reminded me of the morning after he lost to Weidman the first time. Sports Illustrated, who had Loretta Hunt on staff but didn't bother to ask her opinion. They got three mugs who hadn't seen the fight together to talk about how likely it was fixed based on the newspaper articles. It was really strange. But yeah, I'll give that a watch and we'll talk about it, I don't know, next week or something. Anyway, the card last Saturday, Kattar versus Allen. How was it? So-so. There were a couple of good finishes on it though. And we'll do main event first because that was the biggest disappointment, because it was getting off to a good start. It was an interesting matchup, and it was a fun tear-up while it lasted. Every time an Arnold Allen fight comes up, I go, I should go back and watch his UFC career, because I don't actually remember a great deal of it. Because he's got something like 10 wins on the trot now in the UFC. And then I go back, and I can't get over how generic he looks. He just fights like some guy. And then at some point, he becomes laser-focused, incredibly sharp, and fast, and becomes this amazing striker. If you watch his early fights in the UFC, he's just a dude. He might as well be wearing sprawl shorts and fighting in 2010. It was really bizarre how fast he's turned himself around, or rather how steadily he's been improving. But with Allen, the tricks are always the left hand, overhand, left straight, lovely left uppercut to the body that he uses a lot. And the step-up right low kick. Those are like his two best weapons, really. And both of them came fully into lever against Calvin Kattar. Kattar could not lay a glove on this man. And then he started selling out for counter elbows and missing altogether. It was very slick because Arnold Allen was slipping outside of elbows and throwing the left straight down the centre. And it's dangerous to be slipping elbows naked, because that's the one thing about... one of the reasons we're always saying... if you're at a speed disadvantage, you're at a power disadvantage, throw elbows. It's because you've got a great chance of cutting the guy open, even if you only half connect with him. You're probably going to cut him open more if you glance them with the blow than if you hit them clean. But yeah, first 2 minutes this fight were back and forth. They were trying to work each other out. And then from like minute 3 to the end of the first round, Arnold Allen is just taking liberties. He's taking the piss. There's a point where he throws a left straight and lands it on Kattar's nose. And then he immediately walks up to him and does the same thing again. And then he does it a third time. And you're going, you can't just keep pitching left straights at this man's face with nothing else in between. But he did. That's just how fucking fast he was looking. Rattled off some combinations. And again, Kattar was getting into this sort of selling out. He's normally the volume guy. He's normally putting in his jabs, getting in good ones and twos and pulling ahead on the cards early. So he's looking for big elbows and knees. There was a good one, actually. He eschewed trying to punch Allen midway through the third round, and because Allen kept circling really well too, he got his arm wide out ahead of Allen as Allen circled towards Kattar's left, slapped him instead of left hooking him. So you can do it you can get your arm further out and slap him than you can if you're trying to throw a powerful left hook. So he slaps him, and then he steps in with a right knee to the body, and it really did get Allen's attention. And he gave him like a nod and was like, yeah, nice. And got back to fighting. But I think that would have been a nice strategy going on, trying to corner him, land stepping knees, trying to clinch him and land knees from the clinch. Because especially Allen was using this sort of shoulder roll that Rory McDonald was doing against Tyron Woodley. I mean, he does. He's coached by Firas Zahabi a lot of the time too, but mainly you'll see Dustin Poirier do it, where he does the shoulder roll, but his arm isn't across his belly as he would be in boxing. His arm is up high and his elbow is pointed out in front of him. So it's really it's biased towards the head. It makes more of a hard shell around your head, and you put the elbow out there so if the opponent runs in, they get an elbow in the face, or they spike their hands on your elbow. And you can even use your tricep and elbow to knock jabs up, which is what Poirier was doing when he was losing the hand fight against Hooker. He just turned his hand downwards and started elbowing the jabs out of the way. It was very slick. But yes, Allen was going to that a lot in this fight, which made me think, get to the body on him, because he's got a heavy bias towards protecting his head with this guard. But as I said, Kattar was selling out, so he got rattled with a good salvo, and then he tried to chase Allen back towards the fence, ran up into a flying knee that was nowhere close. Allen went out the side door, and he sort of tried to turn in the air and landed with his foot sideways and his knee bent in that way that often happens in basketball when guys do a beautiful dunk and they land on one foot and their knee goes sideways. Really bad. Allen swarmed, round ended, went back to his corner. Kattar's corner are just like, yeah, walk it off. Doctor's like, yeah, walk it off. He goes out. Immediately, Arnold Allen steps up into his low kick because that's one of his best weapons anyway. And now the guy's leg is hurt. But he's kicking the other leg. And in the course of Kattar trying to pick his leg up and check, the pressure on his other leg you can watch in the slow-mo replay, something on the outside of his knee moves very quickly, and then he reacts. So you can see a big lump go bang. Then he collapses to the floor and grabs his own leg, and that's the end of the fight. So very sad. I mean, you do count it as a win. It's obviously a win for Allen, and he was winning that fight. It's kind of like Leon Edwards versus Bilal. How much can you get out of one round, even though the one round was incredibly one-sided? But yeah, really not good for Kattar. And flying knees, I mean, I love a good flying knee like everyone else, but there are guys who use them frequently. I always talk about Myrtle Groenhart, used them to step in with combinations afterwards. Alex Pereira does that too, but they just do like a little skip thing, and then they land with their feet basically in their stance, but further forward, leaping across the cage to try and get people like James Irvin back in the wild days of UFC. If you can't control how you're going to land, it can be very, very messy. But it's not like these happen all the time. That's just personally me saying, ooh, even from a striking position, if you land way out of position, you're not in a great spot. But yeah, really horrible, freakish injury to his knee as a result. Good for Allen. He moves on. Sad for Kattar. He doesn't. You look at that featherweight top 15, it is a disaster. Brian Ortega's number 2 in the world or whatever. Bantamweight top 10, all killer. Featherweight top 10, all filler. It's good that we got Evloev and Allen coming up as new blood, because it's just full of guys who won't fight, don't fight, or are really old. Chan Jung is retired, and he's still like number 4 something in the world. Rest of this card. Do you know what I really liked? The first early prelim was good fun between Christian Rodriguez and Joshua Weems. Weems came out with blue hair, so I was like, this guy's losing. I've never seen a man with blue hair win a fight. But Weems, it became very obvious that he was not comfortable on the feet. He was very awkward and running around anxiously. And Rodriguez looked quite cool. So Weems threw a round kick to the body. Rodriguez parried it across himself and spun into a back fist, going the opposite direction to the kick. It was really nice. But then when they clinched up, Weems was doing a great job with something that you can see gentleman Jim Corbett doing in old footage, demonstrating this clinch technique. And I think Conor Rubish wrote something about it, and then Daniel Cormier did it against John Jones. But Weems, from an over-under clinch, so you both got an underhook, you both got an overhook, Weems would have his back to the fence. He would reach his overhook hand through to catch Rodriguez's other hand at the elbow, in the crook of the elbow. And then he would be holding 2 of Rodriguez's arms with one of his, and he'd spin around and try and punch him in the head or elbow. And it worked really well. He did it about 3 times in this fight. I'm gonna put up a gif of it because it was really cool. Just really surprising because he was clearly uncomfortable on the feet, and yet his dirty boxing was pretty slick. Couple of nice trip takedowns, lots of work in the body lock, both men 1 under, 1 over. I don't mind things devolving into like a Greco wrestling match in MMA. It's quite fun, especially when guys are hitting trips and things. I mean, trips are obviously not part of Greco-Roman, but in that shared over-under body lock, it can be quite fun. And Christian Rodriguez ended up on the bottom. They were reading out his takedown defense stats, and apparently he got taken down like 6 times in his last fight. But from the bottom of either half guard or guard, he reaches up, he sits up, grabs a guillotine with the arm in. And it's that guillotine trap we were talking about with, who was it the other day? Oh, it was Caio Borralho versus, is it Muradev? But if you get your guillotine and you have a knee across the belly, as you often do with an arm in guillotine, Luke Rockhold's very good at it too. You can roll the opponent towards that side and, turn him over. And a lot of the time they'll bounce back immediately, or they'll try and bounce back, and it sets up submission chains and sort of scrambly positions. But one of the very popular ones is to use the arm in guillotine and kick the guy over, or roll the guy over. You've got to crunch the head in and you kick him over. They flop to their side, and then you punch your hands all the way through for an anaconda choke. Chaz Skelly got one of the quickest submissions in the UFC history against Maximo Blanco, just doing that combination. Like, he goes arm in guillotine, he knocks the guy down on his side, and he punches his hands through for the anaconda choke. And Christian Rodriguez did that here against Weems, and it got him the submission really quickly. And Weems is a very experienced submission fighter on the floor. Like I believe most of his wins come by submission. And he looked like he knew what he was doing. So he tapped with almost a like, nice, you got me face. But obviously aware that he's getting paid half as much now. But yeah, really nice combination. I'm trying to think of good examples of people teaching it. Neil Melanson teaches it in one of his DVDs, one of his early ones, or instructionals rather. We're well past the DVD age. And I believe he was coaching Skelly at the time that Skelly hit that choke on Maximo Blanco. Other good stuff on this card. Chase Hooper versus Steve Garcia got a lot of attention because Chase Hooper always has been a liability on the feet, and Steve Garcia knocked him out very quickly. Chase Hooper came out. I mean, what got Chase Hooper knocked out here was he came out with confidence and started throwing immediately. You can train grapplers to be difficult to hit. I think he's training with Stephen Thompson, which is what Ryan Hall did, and other people like that. But if you get a guy, you teach him to switch stances, you teach him to stay on open guard, you teach him to throw long kicks and use his hands to frame and movement to keep away from the guy. Never hanging around for combinations and things like that. That's what will get you killed, and that's what got Chase Hooper killed here. And also just engaging so early on. Everyone is so, especially big hitters, they're so dangerous in the first couple of minutes. All you got to do is let them move around a bit, get some of that energy out, make a few missed charges or whatever. Tie them up, clinch, wrestle them, get some lactic acid in their arms or whatever. But Chase Hooper could have done fine from round 2 and round 3 in this fight, striking-wise. I wasn't blown away by Garcia in terms of technique or power or anything. It was just that he had a bit of pop. Chase Hooper doesn't. And that really does stand out at the start of fights. If the fight had gone into the third and Chase Hooper was striking like he was then, and Garcia was striking a little bit slower, probably would have been fine. I don't subscribe to this whole, Chase Hooper. Well, he's got the sort of the Maya thing where, like, if he loses because of some striking, guys will go like, you need to work on your striking full time, or you need to give up striking altogether and only ever wrestle. And you're like, well, he's a mixed martial artist. He's got to try and bring his skills to weigh on the match, but he's also got to be able to handle himself in other areas. Damian Maia did become more wrestling-centric after that Nate Marquardt fight, but he was fairly good on the feet, and he always was. Like, he remained fairly decent on the feet. Certainly passable. And when he was fighting guys like Gunnar Nelson, he was surprising them by lighting them up with left straights and things. You've either got to go the way where you teach him to fight like John Jones, or Aljamain Sterling, so it's just kicks. Your hands are just for framing and tying up and keeping yourself safe. The time you're going to get hurt the most is by standing in front of the guy trading punches, because you're doing things that you are focusing on offensively. You're leaving yourself wide open, and you're giving him the opportunity to throw combinations at you. If you're kicking and framing with your hands and moving and using distance, it's very hard for guys to kill you with a left hook, because they have to get into exchanging range to hit you with a left hook. Maybe they'll catch you with an overhand, but you've got a lot of distance to see that coming. If he has been working with Wonder Boy, this is the thing, like, working with Wonder Boy, yeah, probably would help him if he used the distancing and the distance management and took that away from it. What's not going to help him is getting confident and just like wading in from the first bell and trading punches. Sip of tea. This is Gorgeous Geisha from, again, T2. That's not bad. It's green tea with like strawberries in. Jun Yong Park, the Iron Turtle, got a win over Joseph Holmes. Yeah, fairly straightforward, just grindy. Kept getting the back body lock, getting the back on the floor, and finally got the choke. He was trying to use his legs in the back body lock control, but if you watch really good guys like obviously Gordon Ryan, but go watch Bodini. He did the same thing at ADCC this year. Eddie Cummings back in the day in Eddie Bravo Invitational. Gary Tonin. They get the back and they use their hands to pass one of the opponent's hands to their leg, and then that's not coming up again. They've got their leg trapping the hand. Whereas Jun Yong Park here was trying to choke the guy, and then he'd just try and like kick his own foot up like BJ Penn up to chest height and axe kick the guy's hand down, and it just it won't work like that. But he got his choke, he got his submission, and it was all good. Marcus Rogerio de Lima finally stopped the Andrei Arlovski decision streak he knocked him down and then he got a rear naked choke where Andrei was basically just waiting for the guy to get under his neck. He was like, I can't tap yet. Oh, okay, now I can tap. Sad, but Andrei Arlovski gets paid the price of a house every time he fights. It's incredible. And I'm not hating on him. I think that's awesome. But it just shows, because he's not selling any tickets. No one is going to these fights going, I want to see Andrei Arlovski. And they can afford to pay him $150,000 a fight or $300,000 a fight or whatever it is, without any damage to their bottom line. So everyone else is getting screwed. What was good? Roman Dolidze versus Phil Hawes was good. I was really impressed by this. And Roman Dolidze's last one. Previous to that, I thought he was like a big kicker, but didn't really have any hands at all, and wasn't that much of a threat on the feet, that is. And then the fight against Dorcas, he looked awesome. Beautiful knee from the back body lock along the fence. And then this fight, he looked fantastic. Phil Hawes, man, he is a tricky one because he's a really accomplished wrestler, JUCO champion or whatever it is, which I think is the same as like John Jones or Matt Riddle or someone like that. But it's good. It's not D1, but it's based on like what kind of school you go to. But he's also picked up striking really, really well. You can watch some of these performances. Like, he was lighting Chris Curtis up. He battered Darren Wynn. I mean, that's not that unique. But, he looks really crisp. He's got great sort of Muay Thai kicks. He's got lovely straight punches and sets things up well. Even when he had his knee broken in this fight, he throws a jab, he hooks off the jab, and he throws the right hand. And you can see what he's trying to do, but he's just doing it on, like, stiff legs because his knee was fucked up. But we're jumping ahead here. But he is really fragile. He has some chin issues, and also in this fight he managed to get himself horribly injured. Dolidze fights southpaw, Hawes fights orthodox. Hawes lands a good right hand, a right straight down the centre after looking down at the legs. And then the next time they come in, he ducks under Dolidze's left hand, grabs like a claw grip over the neck as he comes up behind him. Very similar to what Ricardo Ramos does. Duck unders to the back from boxing exchanges. Honestly, we were just talking about Chase Hooper, but man, that's how you exchange as a grappler. You get him punching and you duck under and you go, actually, we weren't boxing. I'm now on your back. But he gets to take down off that. Dolidze's in guard, immediately starts throwing overhead elbows, the old tomahawk elbows, and they do really distract people. Hawes was he was using underhooks and trying to grab the shoulders, the top of Dolidze's shoulders, and pull him in. Because the problem with like reaching up to cover or check the elbows or whatever is that Dolidze's legs are immediately going to open, his feet are going to go to your hips, and he's going to kick you away. So he was doing this thing where he was trying to bury his head so that he couldn't get elbowed much while holding on to Dolidze to stop him from moving his hips away. But eventually, like he reacts, and Dolidze is able to throw up an armbar and threaten the armbar, and Hawes stands, which is quite common with armbars, especially in MMA where you can pick the guy up and slam him on his head. And as he stands, Dolidze continues the spin into his legs, which is very standard practice. Maya was doing it years ago, but it's very common in no-gi grappling now. You attack the upper body, they stand, you attack the lower body, or because they're scared of you attacking the lower body, they squat and you attack the upper body, or they drop to their knees and you attack the upper body. Not a new principle, Jeff Munson was talking about it like 15 years ago, but up and down. But that combination works really nicely. If someone stands out of a triangle or an armbar, or even an omoplata, you grab the leg, you invert on the leg, and it used to be that you'd go for like a knee bar, or you try and do a 50-50 thing, but nowadays guys are going to the backside 50-50, which is where you stomp the knee down and their knees on the floor and they're facing away from you, and you can start pulling them into 50-50. And it goes with one of our sort of themes whenever we're talking about guard and MMA here, and developments in the guard game in grappling. There's this this belief that if you go for leg locks, you're going to get battered with punches from top position in MMA. And a lot of the time that is true. Like a lot of leg attacks, especially with the outside ashi coming back in grappling and other sort of straight positions like that, where you're directly in front of the opponent, that is very much true. But there are also positions in grappling that have come into vogue that are leg attacks, and they turn the opponent's knee away, whether that's the reap or the backside 50-50. But moves where you turn your opponent's knee away from you make it very hard for him to hit you. One of my general rules when I'm talking about guard stuff, or playing from the bottom in MMA, get the guy's knee facing the other way. Think about like that calf slice that Kevin Lee ended up in against Charles Oliveira, or any time that Charles Oliveira reaps the leg, basically, turns the guy's knee in across himself, and like they end up turning their back. And it's quite an interesting position because in grappling, when you get yourself exposed to the backside 50-50, or you get your leg reaped or whatever, once your leg's been reaped, you're not going to force it back out again, probably. So a lot of the time you have to sort of concede and turn. And then with backside 50-50, like this was, anything for that K-guard sort of position, you end up backstepping and you sort of sit to your butt in 50-50, which is a downgrade sort of because you were on top, but it's 50-50. You could still come up on top. But I get the sense in MMA, guys are so concerned with staying on top, and rightly so, that they refuse to backstep a lot of the time, or turn and concede top position. And that seemed to be the case here. Like Phil Hawes sits on top of him with his leg pulled out sideways, not in immediate danger of like a knee bar or a heel hook or anything like that, but in a compromised position. But because it's a compromised position and not a proper submission attack, he's like, okay, I'm staying here. When really he probably should have been backstepping, sitting into like the 50-50 and then trying to stand up again. Certainly that would be the route of attack for someone in a pure grappling context. But because you got the strikes and because he's a wrestler, it's like, oh, I've got to stay on top. You're not doing any striking from there. It's a pickle. You can convince yourself that you're doing the right thing, and then his knee just got blown apart from being talked outwards, laterally over Delitze's hips. And it reminded me a lot of the Cub Swanson Jake Shields knee reap. Took Cub Swanson out of action for a year. One of the least bad things that Jake Shields has done lately. But yeah, it's a reap, but he's not on the heel hook. So Cub Swanson's sitting there going like, okay, well, I'm safe for now, and staying on top of him. And this is a grappling match, by the way. This isn't even MMA. And then at a certain point, Cub's knee just goes sideways, and he was out for a year because of it. With the reap and the K-guard / backside 50-50 entries and so on, the goal is always to turn the opponent's knee away from you, and it's sort of trying to fight your knee back into the opponent. Seems to be how you get your knee injured. Whereas conceding and backstepping and sitting to your butt and coming up or trying to come up after that seems to be the way to go. But his knee pops and Delitze lets it go. Phil Hawes stumbles up. It looked like he was going to tap and then he didn't. Stumbles up, back to the cage. Dan Miragliotta comes in and physically his back hits Delitze in the chest. He gets in the way of him. Delitze was, going, please look at him, I think the fight's over. But then they decide the fight's not over. And you could see Hawes, trying valiantly to fight. But because his knee, every time he steps into jab, his back leg slides out like he's on ice. And then he throws like a 1-1-2, and it's just arms because he's trying to stay on balance the whole time. It's really, it's not fun watching people who are properly compromised try and fight. But Delitze got him by switching to orthodox and throwing a big overhand, which shocked Hawes. And then he hit him with a couple more punches, knocked him out cold. It was kind of this, we could always say, probably corner should have thrown in the towel, but just they don't do it in MMA. They're just, they'll let their fighter die because, it's half your purse up in smoke if you, the moment you throw in the towel. Anything else good? There was controversy about Kelly Roundtree versus Dustin Jacoby. I've got to say, for £205, this was a pretty good striking match. Certainly compared to the middleweight one between Armin Petrosian and whoever it was he was fighting the other day. AJ Dobson, maybe? Which was just Pat Wyman wrote. No, it was just the two of them doing the same things over and over with no regard for what the other one was doing. This one, Jacoby came out, has had great success low kicking and low kicking in MMA since coming back from Glory. Throws a low kick, Khalil Roundtree immediately leaps in with a southpaw right hook and almost takes his head off. And then you saw the first round was Dustin Jacoby sort of working that out. So he's going southpaw himself. And then he's entering from southpaw and then switching into orthodox as he's in range to land some punches. And just getting off good volume. His hands looked really good. Second round was more of the same. And then third round, Khalil Roundtree actually hit him and really got after him. I thought 2-1 to Jacoby. Obviously, this is the thing. I like Khalil Roundtree, so I'll actually take the win here. But it was some sketchy-ass judging, this fight. Anything else good? Jared Vanderaa got his 5th loss in a row. Trayson Gore versus Josh Fremd was fun. Gore's wrestling looked really good. And then Fremd ended up trying to take him down in the second round. Got caught in a guillotine, forearm across the throat. And tried to, turn towards the elbow, which put him in sort of a rear naked choke guillotine, where we're talking about your windpipe is in the crook of the elbow. So you're getting the squeeze on both sides of the head, you get that blood choke, as opposed to the forearm across the throat, which is what most the old school guillotine is. Very weird. It reminded me a lot of Evan Dunham versus Sean Shirk. Sean Shirk put himself in that position against Evan Dunham too. Almost got himself decapitated. Max Griffin versus Tim Means was very... It was an okay fight. It was just sort of like MMA by numbers. Griffin did well in the first 2 rounds, and then in the third round he was just like, I am knackered and I am not letting Tim Means up or doing anything from closed guard. It was a rough third round, but he got the decision. And then Allen versus Kattar we talked about. So the only really good thing that happened this weekend was Mansour Barnoohi returned after 3 years as an Afro Ronin in the wilderness. No, he won $1 million, and then he was just gone for 3 years. So I think I was rightly concerned coming into this fight. I was going, has he just run out of money? But it seems like he's been training the whole time, or at least training, because he got taken down by this guy, Piccolotto, I think it was. And they were touting this guy's black belt in jiu-jitsu and stuff. And I said after the fight, this dude, Mansour Barnoohi, he swept Kevin Lee and Islam Makhachev like it was nothing. Your black belt doesn't mean anything here. But what Mansour Barnoohi's always done is the giggler sweep, or the John Wayne sweep, or the one-armed man sweep, or the knee lever, or the twist sweep. There's a 1,000 different names for it. I, by habit, call it the giggler because when I first encountered it was when Sean Roberts did it to... Maybe when Sean Roberts did it to Rodolfo, or when Luke Stewart did it to Andre Galvao in MMA. And he learned it from Sean Roberts, and Sean Roberts calls it the giggler. Ryan Hall learned it from Paul Schreiner, who calls it the twist sweep. John Danaher calls it the knee lever. Sean Williams calls it the John Wayne. There you go. That's where all the names come from. But the trick is, it's a half guard sweep. You hold one of their wrists, the wrist of the leg that's trapped in your half guard, and then you put your foot on the floor outside their knee, or you put your foot on your own foot, and you physically basically turn your knees from right to left, and that off balances them. Your knee knocks their hips offline, and because you've got their hand, they fall over. Now, at the high levels, a lot of the time, it's just used to get an underhook. Because what happens is you go for the sweep, the guy rips his hand free of your wrist control, posts his hand, and then you have the underhook. So a great example of this would be Gordon Ryan versus Matthias Deniz, which I'm sure you can find on YouTube. But he uses the knee lever, the giggler, whatever you want to call it, off balances him. Deniz rips his hand free and posts it on the floor. Gordon Ryan sits up, grabs the underhook, and then starts doing his shoulder crunch sweep. He puts his butterfly hook and he hits his shoulder crunch. Because that's something you could do once you got the underhook. Now, Mansour Barnoohi has the big nog thing where he's a very long guy in his division. He's got incredible grip strength. So he does, and also there's a glove. So he doesn't have to he very rarely loses the wrist. So guys just fall over. And it's not a super athletic looking sweep, because it's not like you're lifting them up in the air like a butterfly sweep. You're just sort of tilting them and they go, oh no, I've got no arm. I've got no base on that side. And they just sort of fall on their side. And he's been doing that for years with the wrist, but Piccolotti took him down and he let Piccolotti have the underhook and he didn't have a knee shield in, which is a position you can do it from, but it's a little bit more dangerous, a little bit harder because you're in a bad position if you can't get their weight moving, you're getting past. And he did it. He did it with the overhook and no knee shield, and he just tilted him over, got top position immediately, got on his back. Round 2, he does the same thing, gets on the back, finishes with a rear naked choke. Incredible, this dude, as a grappler. In MMA, that is. I don't think he took a punch. I don't think he just mogged this dude for 2 rounds. Oh, in the second round, he ended up on the bottom again. Piccolotti took him down again. This is the thing. I don't want to see him fight anyone who can't take him down because I want to see him fucking work his guard. It's kind of like I loved Khabib's guard, but we only saw like 13 seconds of it in his entire UFC career. He did some weird octopus stuff, which I love. But yeah, he just never ended up on his back. But Mansobano, so he ends up on the bottom again, and he starts going for the giggler. He grabs the wrist, and the guy goes, oh no, I'm having that. And he tries to sit for a Kimura on that arm. And Mansobano just like picks him up with his legs and pushes him round into back control. It's a crazy good transition. Go have a look at that. But yeah, Bono wins by rear naked choke, second round. Really, he's just like Patricky Pitbull has the title in that division, the bad Pitbull. So really, it was whoever got the fight with him first gets the belt. But unfortunately, Usman Nurmagomedov did. So that sets up a really interesting fight between Usman and Barnui, because Barnui also has a win over one of Khabib's cousins and teammates in, I think, was it Road FC? It was one of their, but basically, the guy took him down, and Barnui just kept trying to hit the giggler sweep. And turning himself off the fence. The guy would try and take him down by the fence and push him into the fence. And Barnui would put his hands and feet on the fence and turn himself away and start sweeping him back towards the middle of the ring. And he did a great thing too, where the guy, I can't remember his name, sorry, Khabib's cousin. Fuck it. That's how they'll book him when he reaches Bellator or the UFC. You won't know his name, he'll just be Khabib's cousin. But Khabib's cousin kept like sitting down low, trying to stop him giggler sweeping him. And Barnui would start looking for a ninja choke, with which is like it's like a rear naked choke, but on the front. Very cool. So yeah, I can't wait to see that fight. If he becomes like the Dagestani Slayer, the modern day Sakuraba, how cool would that be? So what we got going on this weekend? Not a lot interesting, to be honest. I am currently working on Advanced Striker 2.0. Israel Adesanya, going to get that out before his fight the weekend after. If you're a Patreon boy, if you're not a Patreon boy, sign up, read that and the Alex Pereira one, because they're going to go together. But on this weekend's card, we got Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos. Should be fun. Lemos coming off the win over the Karate Hottie, who obviously is half her size, and coming off being mogged by Jessica Andrade in a standing arm triangle before that, which was awesome. And Marina Rodriguez, on a 4-fight winning streak, got the split over Yan Xiaonan a few months back. Also has a win over Michelle Waterson. Lost that split decision against Carla Esparza that people complain about. Yeah, she's in a good spot. Basically, it's Lemos' power versus Rodriguez's craft. I would expect Lemos to mix it up with the wrestling a bit more, because that has been historically a weakness of Rodriguez. Could be fun, could not. Neil Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez in the co-main. Yeah, solid journeyman fight. Josh Parisian versus Chase Sherman in that bad heavyweight round robin tournament that they're doing forever on these main cards. Another Russian against Nate Maness. Mark Madsen's back. Marco Madsen, he's fighting Grant Dawson. Derek Minner's back. He's quite fun. He's fighting some Chinese lad, or possibly Mongolian. No, Chinese, it says here. Miranda Maverick, yeah, all right. Jinyu Frey, yeah, okay. Jake Hadley, he's quite fun. Yeah, God, this card is largely dirge. Hopefully fun stuff happens on it, and we can talk about that afterwards like we did today. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't try and do just a preview episode of this card. Yeah, I reckon that'll do us for today. I'm going to be back in the next few days with the Advanced Striking 2.0 Israel Adesanya. Got some work to do on that. Should be fun. If you want to support the podcast, get in on the extra episodes and be a boy, sign up to the Patreon. If you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing anytime, fightprimer.com. I am your boy, Jack Slack. Actual pay-per-view just round the corner. Bless.